a committee to order. It's our regular April meeting. And was it properly noticed? Clint's giving me a thumbs up. We have a 19-point agenda. I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Manning, seconded by Luck. All those in favor of agenda approval signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We have an agenda. Public comment. Do we have anyone wishing to make public comment? And that means anybody. Anybody can talk. Okay. Previous minutes were published. Does anyone have any corrections, additions, changes, things they want to discuss? If not, I will declare them published and accept it as published. Reports, interview and selection process for HR director. Mr. Langrick.
Mr. Chair, several different reports for you this evening. First one, as you had mentioned here with the HR director, for informational purposes, wanted to bring it to your attention that we do have the position is posted in both the Shopping News and the Richland Observer, as well as on the county's website, indeed in the county's Wisconsin Counties Association page. Please help spread the word that we have the position out there, and we are receiving applications in right now. I think Assistant Dahl said that we do have 3 applications in as of today. Applications are due by Monday, April 10th at 3 p.m. The process thereafter for selection is we plan on scheduling interviews for the week of April 17th to be performed by a team consisting of John Hokemer, who's going to be your interim, Ingrid Glassbrenner, Tom Rislow, or a delegate from Pine Valley, Tricia Clements, and Derek Kalish. Selection will be made by the interview team. Reference checks will be completed by Friday, April 21st, with offering and negotiation scheduled for Monday, April 24th. An anticipated start date with notice given is approximately May 8th or after. Letters of unacceptance will be sent out by Assistant Dahl the week of the 24th. Questions or concerns with that item?
Mr. Langrick, did you say we had a lot of interest in the job?
I believe we had 3 in today, or 3 as of today, Assistant Dahl? 4. 4 applications in as of right now.
And are they all internal, or some internal, some external?
They're all external candidates at this time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, everyone aware of what that's going on there? We approved that position meetings ago, and this is the culmination. Yes, Mr. Carroll.
I noticed the anticipated start date is May 8th. We feel like that's enough time between offer and acceptance.
It's anticipated. It could shift.
Okay. Finance policy development.
Okay, we can jump there if you'd like. Otherwise, I got the next one queued up here for the shared revenue discussion.
Oh, excuse me.
Is that what you're doing?
Shared revenue.
Let me share this one on the screen. So this one came up in a question during one of our meetings. It's a little bit more of a in-depth type of one. So to kind of tee up the explanation, let me bring up for you the statement we get from our shared revenues. Each year we get 2 of these documents. One I believe comes in roundabout of July or so that gives us our anticipation of our revenue share, and then the final one comes in November with a second amount for the distribution list. On the distribution list that we received last November 2022, it included an amount here that you see up on your screen underneath line 18 for adjustments, where it had medical transport deductions as an adjustment that came out as a reduction to that shared revenue amount. So the question came up on why is that adjustment there? So the notice of the shared revenues contain that 42,000 and change on the line 18 as we talked about. After investigating the discovery that this adjustment deduction is a withholding for having to account for the release of supplemental payment for Medicaid that was previously released to Health and Human Services in compliance with Wisconsin State Statute 494551 Medical Care Transportation Services. In the summary document, you'll see the language there that specifies what the statute is and how it reads. So essentially, the $42,061.80 of supplemental Medicaid is accounted for as an adjustment in context to the two shared revenue disbursements because it arrives on a separate check in compliance with the Wisconsin state statute. So long explanation and some backup documents to show it, when we received it and when we accounted for it. But in future references, when we see that adjustment section on the state shared revenue amounts, that's why it ends up being considered an adjustment and not just part of the shared revenue formula. Mr. Chair.
Thanks. Not enough, but thank you for that report. Anyone, questions, observations? No?
Okay, cruising
Okay,
along.
Next thing, consent was
For the next one, buckle up. This one's going to get kind of long and dry, and I do apologize, but it is near and dear to a lot of you folks, obviously, on the finance and personnel, and a lot of us working in this building as we try to centralize and standardize. So in efforts of improving our financial practices and fostering consistency across the organization, a financial policy has been drafted and circulated for financial staff and department head feedback. A brief walk through the draft is what we'll accomplish here today, focusing on some of the main key elements coming from discussions and how it impacts you folks. And then again, this is just a rollout, not looking for any type of action that you may have on it tonight with approving it and recommending resolution, but kind of bringing it forward for your review and to educate you on it, and then offering an opportunity for discussion on it tonight, as well as hopefully giving you enough information and education on it. If you read it, then in between meetings, you can certainly reach out to us with questions and recommendations moving forward. So it is a policy that looks like up on your screen here. It is also item 08A in your packets this evening. Taking it right from the top, you'll see an introduction with some purpose language. And then we kind of get into some governmental accounting principles. This kind of talks on the main three types of funds, of government funds, proprietary funds, fiduciary funds, and what that kind of means, and standardizing that also then in definitions. So when we're hitting budget seasons or talking about how we're doing accounting structures, we're kind of all operating the same type of language. And this language is not anything new. It's all consistent with your government accounting or your GAAP and your GATSB types of languages. We do have then underneath there, underneath the different types of funds broken down into the sub-funds with different definitions. You can see underneath, like your example, your proprietary funds of having enterprise funds, which many of you folks that operate on a highway committee, or if you operate on Pine Valley and Child Support Committee, I'm sorry, now it's Public Works Committee, you understand now how those funds are kind of set separately as revenues in and expenditures out and operating kind of in a market type of a capacity. So that's the first type of a section. Accounting policies then becomes the next session, and I would draw your attention intimately to the bottom of page 4, appropriation and revenue control policy. Language in there kind of addresses conversations we've had with this body. Department heads and designated account fund managers are responsible for their respective departments' expenditures and revenues in comparison to budget, something we already kind of know and do. Oversight committees are responsible for monitoring for compliance, something that we know and do by our committee structure and trying to do quarterly reviews on those expenditure documents and cash balances.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So I just want some clarification. So when we're looking at their, like in public safety, we do it every 3 months or so. We'll look in detail at everyone's bottom line. So when we're looking at, they might have one line item that they've overspent, but then other line items where they've underspent. So what I generally do is, I mean, we talk about those, but then we look at the bottom line to see overall for their budget, are they right on time? Are they over, are they under? Is that appropriate, or are we supposed to, every time there's a line that goes over, we're supposed to do what this says here?
Well, that's what we're trying to, so right here, with the language that we would have right here is expenditures beyond department or fund allocation are unauthorized without appropriation adjustments by transferring journal entry or balance budget amendment. So essentially, you're moving money from a different account to theirs to balance it out so you can continue expending, or you're
If it's within the same account, if a line is over and one line is under and it evens out, then we're okay.
At a department level or a fund level right now. That's
Okay.
what this is
All
kind of inferring.
That's,
Good question. So, but at the same time, though, this is telling your administrator and your staff of saying now, if we have situations where we're going to be going over, your administrator isn't going to be able to just approve it without going through a resolution to either move funds from one major account to another, one department or one fund, or doing some type of a budget adjustment of saying offsetting revenues. Like you might have situations where you do want to increase expenditures because you know you have this other stream of revenues, and at that point, then we should be amending that budget also then to show offset revenues.
Would this then accomplish eliminating deficiencies?
Should help monitor it, but eliminating it, I would not make such a promise, because certainly things are still going to catch you by surprise. Or they might not be surprised. You might just be operating knowing that that type of thing is coming. Yeah. Yes. So, and then we have a section here that talks about budget renews and controls, and the timing of review, the method of performing a review, and the level of appropriation control, which also kind of then talks to that extent. All financial and budget concerns should be brought to the attention of Finance and Personnel Standing Committee on a timely basis. And that kind of, again, maybe talks to the extent on, hey, we know that we're running low on funds because of X, Y type of Z factors. We may need to do some type of an adjustment to the budget of, again, a revenue thing or transferring money from one fund to another, which we already do in practice a lot with what you'll see with like Health and Human Services when they know that an ADRC type of function might get put into a transportation use and those mechanisms. But again, trying to solidify it and put it into language to implement and enforce. Capital cost sections. So this section is it's a little bit kind of more complicated, but it's referencing a Gatsby statement 34. Now, Gatsby statement 34, as you all know and are well versed in, is kind of the main Gatsby statement, which kind of directs on what your structure should look out, your layout should be for kind of auditing type purposes and what it should look like. It talks on the different elements that should be in your audited objectives, and part of that then includes your cost allocations. Our section for our audit at the end of the year, if you look underneath the independent auditors reports on page 24 and 25, you'll see where we do have capital assets, how we have it defined, and what the asset thresholds and the reportable amounts are. The two departments, as you'll see in here with the bullets, Highway Department, Health and Human Services, Pine Valley Village, are the departments that are most often kind of utilizing deficiencies and capital improvements for their different cost allocation impacts and their different funding mechanisms through Medicare and Medicaid and state formulas for reimbursements. So that kind of lays that out, as well as a depreciation policy and explanation. And then goes into several different generic types of methods of depreciation, service life assessment, and then budgets for depreciation. Again, for the most part, that's going to impact probably those three departments the most. We do have in here too a call for an inventory type system, which is part of our strategic plan as well, to try to capture a list of all of our different capital assets. The most comprehensive list we would have at the time is the assets that we do have in inventory that we have in our property insurance database, but seeing this as building into future years' budgets of having that property listing of all your different capital assets. Chart of accounts, this kind of comes back into an educational piece, but also standardization on what our account structure looks like. Most of you folks are familiar with the fund, department, project, and service number, or the object, expenditure, or revenue line. This kind of gives a little bit of breakdown on what the purposes of those types of things are, as well as what our looks like. If we move into eventually into a different type of a system, you could add, more differentiators in between here and go two more lines to help with your reporting mechanisms. But for the most part, at the front end, the different fund and the service expenditures, consistency with trying to make those work with other elements and by Gatsby definitions kind of gives you pretty good clear guidance on how to follow those elements of it. Accounting procedures, this goes into the kind of the journal entries. So when we start to change monies, inter-fund or inter-account types of elements, this is giving us a procedure and the different elements that should be included in a transfer funds. This is near and dear to Tammy Wheelock, your accounting supervisor in the back, as she executes these different fund transfers on behalf of the county and switching with the double entry method here at the bottom. Deficiency appropriations. So we do have a section here now that's defining on when we're hitting deficiency type of an appropriation and what that means. If we do hit the end of the year, if we're going to balance out from our general fund, Fund 10, like we're going to consider this evening, the language is captured on here on when those should be happening in the future and for what purposes they should be happening, and the authorities in which you can execute those. Accounts receivables, we have procedure and purpose language on monies coming in and how they should be accounted for. And this also includes language if you have monies that are coming in after the books are closed and you're trying to make sure that they're accounted in the proper year. Accounts payable, this hitting our offices as well for releasing of disbursements. We have procedures on how bills are paid and how they're received. And again, we have language on here as if we're following the calendar year, if we're trying to put those accounts back towards the previous year on how that process should look like. Maybe just take a pause here. Does anybody have any questions on all this fun?
More clarification. So an example from yesterday, we, in land and zoning, there's an open position, and Mike, we wanted him to advertise again, and he said, I don't have any, my line item for advertising is going to be overspent if we do that. I'm like, well, we obviously aren't spending salary on that open position. So is that do we have to make a transfer from the open salary position to that other, or if his bottom line is good, then what we did is appropriate and we don't have to do anything further?
With the language we would have in the policy here, it would be at a department fund type of a level. So you'd be authorized yet to spend it within that. You can do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Now, at the same time too, though, you have language in your committee structure document that would suggest that finance and personnel is authorized to make transfers of funds within department types of elements for each object line. So how much control you want to put into this policy to enforce that, of saying exactly what you're saying, who can authorize on switching money from advertising line to mileage line? Or
we were just telling him that it's okay to overspend his advertising line because we know we're going to underspend the salary line.
yes,
Was what we said.
But as long yes, you just have to make sure you're counting that in the budget to make sure that you're not.
At the end of the day, yeah, at the end of the day, okay. All right.
Mr. Seep, were you wanting to be recognized?
I apologize, I sneezed.
Oh, gesundheit.
Okay, next item, which impacts probably the mothership more than departments, is your new vendor setup, but this is putting new vendors into our systems and getting their W9s and all that things to make sure that you have them in there correctly and that we're tracking them for issuing 1099s at the end of the year. We have a small language in here on multiple department bill process. You do have situations where we're paying phone bills, internet bills, different software bills and conjunctions from multiple departments. So how does that look like, and who's responsible for those different items? Cash receipts, we've got language in here on how those should get to the treasurer's office and when and what that looks like. Investment policy, we just have reference that there is already an investment policy in here, and we're referencing a different book for that. Cash disbursements, language here on vouchers and what that looks like for releasing then the funds out, as well as the different criteria to meet, put underneath the procedure. We have a section here then on mileage, meal and parking reimbursements and what that should look like. We have a section then on special checks that we have reserved. I don't think we have the language filled in right now, but there are occasions when a special check is released and cut. Oh, I'm sorry, we do have purpose and then the procedure for doing that. Petty cash reimbursement. And then we get into purchasing, which I know Supervisor Carroll has interest in and expressing it occasionally. And what that looks like for the rules and regulations, of course, we're referencing to Rule 14 on here for our authority types of languages. And we're talking about the different responsibilities of departments for the purchase. We have a payroll section then. This kind of, again, it's more near and dear perhaps to our mothership here, but then also understanding from our different departments on what should be in place and when those payments are going to happen for those payrolls. We have multiple different payrolls, each have a little bit of their own flavor. Bear with me, we're almost there. County grants. County grants remains as its own policy. We're not going to try to incorporate that into this. We already have a federal grant policy that is written, and we have monthly meetings. We're trying to bridge that then into eventually being a all grant type of a policy. Budget process. Did you have a question, Carrie?
Yeah, Carrie Severson, go to a mic, please.
Please make sure it's an easy one.
Supervisor Severson.
Would that stop a department head if they find a grant that to go ahead and apply for it without asking their committee to apply for it? It's only upon acceptance do we need permission, correct?
That would relate back to Rule 14, and the language would state that for a grant that requires matching fund or in kind, that it's county board resolution with some exceptions that's also put into Rule 14.
Okay.
But otherwise, then if it's not that, then a county administrator, I think, can authorize applying and accepting.
So what's the answer to Carrie's question? I heard your answer, but I don't have it clear.
I can read it if you would like.
Okay,
Tell me if this is wrong. No department or county government may undertake a program, initiative, or contact with or apply and accept a grant unless approved by the county administrator. If the grant requires matching funds, in-kind match, or adding personnel, it will require approval by the county board before submission.
Correct.
before submission.
Okay, and I think we'll talk on that further too on item number 13. Thank you. Budget process. So then we have this one here, and this kind of gives then the breakdown of what all that looks like. By the big part is kind of the procedure, at least from my perspective. It's referenced here just in kind of bullets on the different elements that would recommend that you keep in the budget process, but as needs arise and how timelines line up, things might get jostled in and out of order. But it captures in here conditions of the county report, which is a duty that's based in statute for your administrator. Strategic plan reference, review and update of the 5-year financial plan, review and update of the capital improvement plan, short-term note borrowing plan, negotiations with collective bargaining units in the years where that's applicable, development and distribution of your appropriations request guidance letter, worksheets, and supporting forms. Those are, again, how you're telling your departments to complete their worksheets and turn them back in. Department submitted worksheets and supporting forms, administrator review, budget presentation by the administrator to Finance and Personnel Committee, budget recommendation from Finance and Personnel Committee, and that's kind of in context of what's going to the county board. Public notification is handled by the clerk, budget hearing before the county board, resolution to adopt the annual budget, and then you have submission and publication. Questions or concerns with any of those items? Internal control, there's a section here listed out for internal control of the many duties and having separations of duties and defined roles. Then we have our language in here on our credit card policy, our purchasing cards that we issue out, and a small, rather kind of generic cost allocation section right now that has room for expansion once we get more kind of comfortable with how that looks for each different department individually. And we have a couple different documents past that on future use for capital asset worksheet of listing those out. Disposal, and then we have a incurred expense, kind of a voucher type form here, which is also in development. So that is what the drafted document looks like. It has been put out to folks from the finance team. I think department heads, we might have taken a look at it, but since then too, we've also cut at it and hacked at it a little bit internally with myself, Assistant Dull, and with Accounting Supervisor Wheelock, and also with Clerk Kalish, and trying to refine it. Anticipate taking it back through a finance team, through a department head, and then eventually back to you folks then for consideration and possible resolution. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. My question to you, Clint, is why and why now? Why are we looking at this now? What brought this to the forefront?
Been in the works for a while. The catalysts on transitioning out and, okay, what are the elements that need to be in a budget process to set the next person and such up for success and kind of build that map. There's been questions on our control elements. We've had recent meetings in which we've had expenditures that have kind of went outside of that framework of past a department budget and a fund budget and what that looks like. Continued questions on, and we're not there yet, on like our bidding processes and things like that. So it's been cooking and simmering now for quite a while, and is one thing to try to get kind of teed up, not that I'm throwing it on the floor and then running out of the room kind of a thing, but I wanted to make sure that it got attention and into the meat grinder before I departed and it got lost to the weeds kind of a thing. So
I have
those
a
are the
follow-up
many
question,
different elements.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Seep.
Yes, this is a well put together document. I haven't seen this before, and I'm not sure that we have had this type of documentation to look at. You call this a financial structure document. It's a proposed policy for the county board. Is that correct?
Yes, it would be a policy I would envision being adopted by the county board with discretionary changes granted to the finance and personnel committee.
Very well done. I know it appears to me that a lot of thought and work has been put into this, and it's something that's very useful, not only to the board and the committees, but certainly to the department managers. So, a job well done. I wondered about, how this, as Marty said, why now? Where does this come from? I wondered about the origin of this, and so you explained that this has you've been working on this for quite some time, and I'm sure all of us appreciate this document.
Thank you. And it's not we didn't start at blank pages. The original base document, and having reviewed a couple different counties types of work, I was partiality to a document that was housed by Controller Terry DeMajic in Clark County. A lot of confidence in hers. That being said, though, probably 35% of this has probably already been chopped up in some way, shape, or form. At least 35-40% of it has been changed to meet Richland County needs.
This seems to be a blend of policy and procedure.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Carroll.
I noticed a couple of spots where you reference other policies, like the bids and contracts policy.
Yes.
So this is part of a suite of policies, it sounds like. Do you have in mind the others that we still need to generate?
The ones that we need to generate or bolster would be our bid process. We need more work in expanding our grant one, and I think there is one other one that we reference in here, that credit card one. Thank you. So yes, it's not a finalized end project. This is going to solve everything. The other driving element that kind of pushed this to the front of the pile too is, we know in talking with our finance team that we need to really start having more and more conversations, of which we are, on getting ourselves in a position to consider switching to a new ERP system and off the AS400 with a new accounting software and pay software and payroll software and potentially timekeeping types of things coming down the road. So solidifying what our practices are right now in paper so that we know what framework we need to be referencing when we're bringing a new system in the house, and having that written down is also of great value to us.
I have some more detailed questions, but I don't want to bog us down. Would I route those to you?
Questions on this policy right here?
Yeah.
Up until April 14th, and thereafter, I'll be a little bit more spotty, but certainly can.
Yeah.
Anything that you would send to me in context of this, probably best to CC Assistant Dahl.
Okay.
And then also Finance and Personnel, I will get you, if I haven't gotten you John's email yet, I can get that for you as well.
Okay.
Thank you for that report. Any further comments or questions?
At a certain point, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
will we be scheduling a discussion and a vote of approval on this document
I would think so. I would think so,
after we've had time to study it?
right? I guess there's nothing in this procedure, outline procedure, that changes dramatically anything that the county does. It simply brings it and collects it in one place, I think. In my own mind, I remember a couple of situations. One involves Health and Human Services, not picking on you, but at the end of the year, a question always comes up, well, we've got this money left over here, and we think we should be able to continue it forward in our budget for next year and do something. And this, I think, tells us why we don't do it that way. And go ahead, Clint, did you have a comment?
Potentially, I was going to say there is a section in here too where we talk about trying to push our accounting towards non-lapsing funds when it's appropriate.
Right, when it's appropriate.
Yes, because you do I'm sorry, to lapsing funds when it's appropriate. You do have extra challenges with non-lapsing funds because you're not only monitoring that year's budget with expenditures and revenues against it, but then you also have this other element of what's the existing cash balance in the account, and it becomes an added challenge.
And then it occurs to me that we're going to talk about deficiency appropriations tonight. There's one really big one, and it involves Simons. And one of the reasons that got so big is we were almost allowing that budget to be, recurring, to build, instead of looking at it on an annual basis. I know there are a lot of reasons for that. One big one was the pandemic, but when you do that, it adds up, and we're going to look at that tonight. So, Mr. Langreck, do you have anything else for us?
I have one more report for you, sir. Item number 9, Operations Transition Plan.
Yes.
And so this is from our perspective of our office. I know that you folks are working with David Brettel and with John directly in the recruiting process, and I'm sure you're having conversations as well. But from our office, these are the actions that we're trying to accomplish. The background on this item is that our office has begun communications with Interim Administrator John Hokemer of Public Administration Associates LLC in preparation of operational transition. The following elements are under development: a project tracking list, orientation day, computer access, and then scheduling timelines for on-site days. As you know, that it's going to be 3 days in a given week is what we're kind of setting up for a package for John. John has mentioned that he plans on being flexible if there's weeks that come up where he needs to be here 4 or 5 days or only 2 days, to flex those other days to more appropriate weeks to still average out at 3. He's amiable in working with that. Project tracking list has been developed and is under a continued refinement. This list is intended to help mitigate loss of sight or traction on the many projects that are currently underway and outstanding. John is anticipating to be on site on April 12th, next Wednesday, for an orientation day with Chair Brewer And with administration, Administrator Langrick has begun working with MIS to set up necessary accounts and profiles in anticipation of John's arrival. Assistant Dulles began communicating with John on scheduling those on-site days to best maximize committee attendance and key dates. John is anticipating an introduction with county board members at the April 18th county board meeting, and with all departments on department heads on April 20th for the department head meeting, and then meeting with departments individually thereafter. So those are the things that are currently underway, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And we'll be discussing in more detail the procedure with professional associates under a closed item agenda, closed session, I should say.
And on the 12th, I'm anticipating, Chair Brewer, if you're still available, that you'll be the first one kind of spending some time talking with John on that day.
Yeah, I plan to, and I guess I would invite others if they would like to join us that day as well. I don't have a time yet. I'll let you know the time. But I do appreciate the fact he even offered to come to tonight's meeting. I said, no, you didn't. He said, I won't charge you. I said, well, it's okay. You don't have to. So we'll see him on the 12th. All right. Do we want to move into deficiency appropriations? I don't want to, but we will.
Okay. Mr. Chair, let me step here. So tonight, motion to recommend resolution to the county board to make deficiency appropriations for the identified non-lapsing funds. The funds listed in the attached resolution are identified as having overages at the close of 2022. A deficiency appropriation would transfer undesignated funds from Fund 10, the general fund, to cover deficiencies and set the buckets back to zero cash balance, beginning in 2023. If apportionments are not made and negative cash balances will be carried forward into the 2023 books. In your folders, you'll see item number 10A, which is a draft resolution showing the recommended account titles to do the fill up of the buckets, if you will. For the general elections account, the $24,790.39, general election turnout was larger than expected. The cost of ballot printing increased. There was 3 elections during the year with 2 budgeted, and the county clerk was in a new position when the budget was created in 2021 and not aware of the actual cost for elections with the new equipment being used. Expenses are now being tracked for the cost or for the actual impacts. So when we have the carryover for the next year, we're hopefully identifying those and getting a budgeted amount that's going to be more in line with the expenditures. For the Sheriff's Department uniform allowance, I'm tracking that there's a result on this overage was the fact of a turnover in people, and that there is an allowance carryover from year to year in which it can be expended. So there was an overage on the amount that pushed that year's allocation over. For the Simons Recreation Complex Fund, the $40,312.86, tracking here an underage on budgeted revenues. For the Campus Food Service Fund of $53,000, etc., we had Angie's sick time conversion to health insurance, which was approximately $16,000. We had an underage on different revenues, including our Meals on Wheels program at not running at the capacity that was projected in the food service fund budget. For the Richland County Fair, we did have a revenue impact with inclement weather decrease in our gate fees, with rainouts on a few of the days. With dog license, we had contract increase of $3,600, which was the main impact. And for our institutional child placement funds, we had over expenditures in the year of 2022 of $55,565.55 and approximately $135,000 over expenditure at the end of 2021. We did know a deficiency appropriation in 2021 based on discussions that we had had on finance and personnel meeting from November 3rd of 2020, where we had an action to move funds, and the action was failed underneath discussion that we wanted to kind of keep those fund balances intact and the same, so we did not do an apportionments. In talking with staff from Health and Human Services today, we also realized that we had some revenues that had come in 2021 and 2022 post-book closing, which may have been allocated in and not hit this fund, but went to general fund 10. We had a roughly $100,000 in Spark fund that was posted in 2021, and then we're expecting a 94,566 for a posting in year 2022. But putting those in then post-book closing, whether or not it's hitting funds. So this kind of also leads in context of Health and Human Services back to that. Should it be in a non-lapsing fund or should it be in a lapsing fund? Because you're not just dealing with that year's budget, you're dealing with these carryovers from previous years if you don't refill the buckets. An example being back in November of 2020, there was a request to move funds from like Fund 56 to our adult placement fund to balance it. We opted not to. Well, we have Fund 56 then that is kind of carrying with about a $400,000 cash balance, of which is there. But again, because it's a fund balance, it doesn't necessarily, you're not going to see that in your reports on annual expenditures to the budget amount because it's a carried fund balance over here. So those are the different elements. This is the items that are recommended here today to reset these balances at zero, effective January 1st, 2023. And I do have some staff available here if there's any types of additional questions you may have. Mr. Chair.
Questions to Mr. Gotchel?
Thanks, Clint. So said another way, the bottom item there, the institutional children's cost, we have been deficient in this fund for the past 2 years, meaning placements have outpaced what we kind of, put a finger in the wind and think they're going to be that particular year. But the HHS, what we call the core budget fund, has been underspent 2021 and 2022 to the tune of 500,000 or 600,000. Is that correct? Or is that just the 400,000 that's currently sitting there today that you referenced?
In 56, which is still a balance kind of carryover that kind of originates all the way kind of back to 2019-ish or so. So in 2, then the other element we have to kind of ensure that we're being tidy with is when we're doing our entries kind of in that post audit and we have our auditors involved, is making sure that it's hitting the funds that we want and not just the total bottom line of the number, is kind of where there might be also some confusion. Because if we had a Sparks post of 100,000 for 2021 and we're expecting then a late Sparks payment to go back in again post closing of ourselves, that's about 190, which kind of gets you to about balanced in revenues. But again, I think part of the conversation too should be with our adult placement, our youth placement. Do we need to have those as non-lapsing funds, or can we just roll those into our annual year-to-year lapsing funds? Did that answer your question, or did I strategically dive around it?
No, that's a good conversation. I think just for posterity, my point is that, it's certainly not the responsibility of the HHS operational budget to cover these institutional costs when they go over, but the argument could be made in the past 2 years that has been the case. Is that a fair statement?
Possibly in the eye of the beholder, but that's how the funds have kind of shook out.
The eye of the taxpayer.
Yeah, because the core budget is hitting a lapsing fund, and your institutional placements are put into that non-lapsing thing of year end, whether or not you're going to do a deficiency appropriation to make them zero in years that they spend over. Got it.
A little history lesson though is historically these, is it 46 and 54? Are those the 2 funds? I can't remember. Child placement and whatever. Those 2 funds were historically covered under the HHS budget for many years. And I guess 7 or 8 years ago, when things really came to a head, they could no longer cover them under the core. That's when we separated out. Tim, you were I think you're responsible for that terminology, core budget, and that was a good way to do it. So this is kind of hearkening back to that old process. When you look at everything at the end of the day, how did they do? And the answer to that is not bad. Before anyone jumps to a conclusion here that is unwarranted.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Sean, go ahead.
So I don't have a question about this. I just continue to be concerned about accountability with our county finances. This is just looking at deficiency appropriations. It's not looking at funds and or departments where we underspent or brought in more revenue than was budgeted. So I've been looking for this for many years now, and I'm uncomfortable moving forward with deficiency appropriations until we get an idea of the bigger picture, so that we can see how all departments are doing. I think this sends the wrong message. Just that we have a bunch of deficiencies. It doesn't show us the big picture.
Okay, anyone want to comment on Sean's? I will comment, Sean, that regardless of whether we've already paid this money and now we have to fill the gaps for accounting purposes. These are deficiencies. They have to be brought back to zero. And Sean, don't you think that the plan we talked about tonight will help do exactly what you think we need?
I don't know, because I wasn't able to listen to the entire plan, because I had to take a phone call for the first 10 minutes while it was being discussed. But yeah, this, I understand what you're saying, that this has to be done, but I think the context is important. And if we're not looking at the entire budget, when we do these deficiency appropriations, it sends the wrong message to the public that the county is just overspending.
Well, I believe you're correct in that assertion, and this is not wild spending. This is merely, I almost look at this as an accounting procedure, which it certainly is. We're going to ask for a vote on this tonight.
Mr. Chairman, one element of discussion.
Go ahead, Mr. C.
Yes, sort of a follow-up to Sean's remarks about deficiencies and budgets. I think a good approach to dealing with the problem of of deficiencies is a timely and consistent monitoring of budgets. I sometimes think that quarterly monitoring of budgets is not adequate. If we look at the annual budget line by line as a goal, and say we have a line that has $100,000 in it, and at 6 months we're at 50% of the goal, 50% remaining, we know that we're right on target. But if it's 70% over at 6 months, then there's 20% out of line. That's the time to take corrective action. And so I'm a firm believer in more diligent, timely, consistent monitoring of the budgets and reporting of those evident deficiencies as we move along to the Personnel and Finance Committee, so that there's an enforcement and a corrective action involved. I think that we used to have when we were really having a difficult time with the budget, we had a requirement that every department's budget was monitored and reported on monthly. And if there were deficiencies, they were reported to the Personnel and Finance Committee. that was very helpful to us. And now I don't think, I think we've got a hands-off approach when we say, well, we'll look at the budgets every 3 months. And I think we need to look at the budgets more as goal measuring than we do. If somebody is off budget at the end of 3 months or at the end of 6 months, that's the time to take corrective action with regard to preventing deficiencies. I've talked too long.
Thank you, Mr. Seep. Mr. Carroll?
Sure. Yeah, this draft finance policy mentions monthly reviews, so I think we're gonna head back in that direction.
Yeah, he's hearkening back to the explanation, the description Clint gave us before. So one of the problems with these big funds, though, is these are not monthly bill. You don't get bills every month from the home for children, the one that we use frequently. So, and you don't get payments from the state, Trish. So that's one of the problems that we have. It's kind of long-term financing. You've heard the deficiencies. You've heard some explanations. Is anyone ready to make a motion? Mr. Gotchel?
Second.
Seconded by, I'm gonna say Carol seconds because he had his hand up. He wanted to make the motion. Well, all right, and a resolution relating to making a deficiency appropriation various amounts. And it'll be effective immediately upon its passage and publication. And those in favor of this resolution, moving it to the county board, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Thank you, Sean. I believe you're the only no, so I'm going to declare the resolution adopted and to be forwarded. Okay.
We're on item number 11, Mr. Chair.
Oh, yes. Notification of withdrawal, economic development.
Mr. Chair, we're anticipating Richland Center City Council take action this evening, April 4th, 2023, to potentially issue a notice of withdrawal, which would terminate the Richland Economic Development Agreement effective 5 April 2023. With this anticipated action, I've spoken with the Richland Center Administrator, Ashley Oliphant, on possible proposal items to consider in the transition. A draft proposal from Administrator Oliphant is attached in your packet. Item number, bear with me just a second here, 11A. This proposal addresses equipment, vacation, sick leave, IT network, and completion of county projects and next steps. Kind of the focus and the decision points that you have here tonight is evaluating each of those proposal types of elements, but then with a lengthy probably discussion appropriate for the next step section. Underneath your different next steps, you have a request for equipment to be transferred at no cost. This is kind of administration at MIS myself agrees with this, as the request is based on the equipment approaching basically the halfway mark of its life of its serviceability. And though we would have to have the 2 landline phones would be returned for redistribution, as we'll preserve the program numbers within that account. Underneath the next step request is provide a letter stating that the employee is being relinquished. I do have a letter that's drafted that would have the relinquished language in it. With that also, though, is including the idea that we would not pay out Jason as a terminating employee, but that his accrual balances would be transferred to the city and housed there for future payouts. So again, like most separated employees, if they were leaving county, we would pay them out vacation due. In this case, Jason's accrual balances would be transferred to the city with no payout. And then there's a determination for 2023 financial contribution. The city is requesting that the county assumes full responsibility for all expenses that were incurred between January 1st of this year and today, 4/4/23. I agree with this request in context of fulfilling the 2023 budget initiative that the county's 2023 appropriation for economic development was procured from a transfer of defunct Housing Authority CDBG funds and intended to prioritize housing development. Conversation with Jason today, that is the front pin of his priorities that he's assuming. Assuming responsibility for all expenditures through April 4th, 2023 amounts to approximately $33,134.54, or 25.5%. To put that in context of your different numbers, the total budget for economic development is $128,428.44. The revenue account going against it, or the city's contribution, was $51,371.38. If the county is not interested in a financial settlement approach as proposed by incurring the expenses of the first quarter, essentially, a prorated share amount may look like this. You're looking at essentially a $13,228 or so contribution from the city to the date of termination of agreement. If there's some other approach that you folks would like costed, staff can certainly help explore that. Additional consideration for the committee to consider is amending the authorization table. Keep in mind, with that position going away as it's on the agreement, we still do have it on our authorization table to have one full-time economic development director. It may be appropriate for the committee to take action to amend the policy as it sees fits, or to have the position and department removed from that policy. Future contributions. The Richland County 5-year financial plan calls for $64,000 in contributions for 24 through 27. It may be appropriate for the committee to take action on reallocating these funds on the plan for future budgets. I have a bias towards centralized HR and finance functions to meet the directive that was put on you folks for administration, but there's certainly other opportunities for that funds, including the notion of staying engaged with economic development and continuing to support that through different financial avenues towards them, and having potentially a priority on where you'd like to see those funds allocated in economic development. Settling with the city, another consideration then is pending the decision of the agreement with City Council on settling for 2023 economic developments. Both parties also have to settle on accounts with Simon Center deficiencies. And again, that was 2021. We're looking at $47,611 that we're asking for the city to cover for their appropriation. For 2022, it's $20,156.43. And what we received right now from the city, they did pay their full apportionment for economic development for this year of 2023. So we have received $51,371.38 from them. So again, many different talking points here potentially to have, but I would recommend that the committee tonight consider the elements of the proposal from the city on equipment, vacation, sick leave, IT network, completion of the IT projects, and next step. Take action to approve those in whole or in part as you see fit. And then if warranted tonight or in future conversations, what you folks would like to do with the authorization table, future contributions, and settling with the city in context also with Simons. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Carroll.
Yeah. The one element there of the plan is the county projects that are still open, those 4 items. And I just wondered if we know how much effort is remaining and how we would be kept aware of what the status of those is.
I would be ignorant to speak on the details of them, but I can ask that that report is furnished.
And what are the 4 things? Again,
Pull them up here 1 second.
someone read those for me.
So our child care is the grant that we're working with right now out at Rock Ridge at the school there, that grant that came in. CDBG element, I think it might still be closing yet on the auditorium elevator. There might be some final closing elements. EPA is some brown sites that we've been exploring at a couple. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 different townships, and we have brown sites that we're looking at. And then the USDA USEDA includes like the projects like I'm gonna forget the name of it, the one creek or river project that was Fancy Creek project. It's a big part of that. Thank you, Steve.
I don't see those projects being dropped by Jason Glassbrenner. Knowing him, his diligence and follow through, but I think we do have to make some sort of statement from the county that we expect those things to be continued and followed through.
And it's my understanding with the administrators from the city's proposal here that those elements are handled on the behalf until completion or appropriate turnover if situations were to extend it.
Okay. My thoughts on this are, I hate to see, we have, what did we have budgeted for contributing to RED? 30, is it 35,000 yearly?
So the total expenditure budget is 128,000, and the contribution from the city is 51,000. They're 40%, so our 60% is roughly 77,000.
But in oncoming years to come, we've have that, haven't we? 35,000.
We have it right now in the financial plan calls for 64,000, which I believe takes it down to a third split. I'm sorry, half split.
Okay, I believe in economic development, and it's a disappointment to see RED discontinued county participation in RED. I have every confidence that RED will continue under the city's auspices, but I really feel that the county ought to have a stake in this. How do others feel about it? Committee? Mr. Gotcho.
I think before I can comment on that, I need this broken down just a little bit more, and maybe I'm just way behind, and if so, I can sit quietly, but the city is giving us notice of withdrawal from economic development. They are assuming Jason's employment, and the RED board is dissolving by proxy or officially.
The RED board exists by nature of that agreement between the county and the city. So by them withdrawing, the agreement dissolves.
Okay.
And so the language there that would give authority in what the RED board does dissolves with that.
Okay.
A proposal was floated that would keep the RED board on an advisory capacity involving a wider base community, which it recently changed to, but that did not gain any traction with the city. And if the county was going to do anything about it, we would have to go it alone on that.
Sure. Can I be put at ease why the recommendation is for us to assume expenses incurred between January 1 and now?
So I can't speak on all the things that are on their end of the table. The discussion that I had was, again, it's based on when I brought the budget forward for participation with economic development in this year, 2023, it was based on bringing in revenues from defunct CDBG funds that were taken from Housing Authority. And so the mindset was to take those and displace them, to try to still put it in a housing initiative of which it felt appropriate, as that's what the money was taxed at one point in time to get those funds. And the other element, from the city's perspective, is with that and the county assuming those responsibilities, that they're willing to allow then time dedicated to completion of the child care CDBG. EPA and the US EDA is kind of the exchange is what I see here.
Okay, so there's a good faith understanding that we will assume financial responsibility up and including today, but our initiatives in progress will be at least due diligence to potentially be seen to completion.
Yeah, that's what I understand.
Okay.
I think that the red has done good. I see infilling or whatever they call it, the houses being taken down in town and new structures being put up. I see buildings being torn down. And yes, this is all in the Richland Center City, which is a large part of our county, a third of our county resides in the city of Richland Center. So I'm really happy with those things that are happening. And I know I cannot speak for the mayor. The mayor speaks very well for himself, but I know he's 150% behind this effort.
So
Anything
again,
else? Yes.
I would say, again, this is still pending action from city council tonight, but that what I'm gathering through the administrator and through our meetings with that ad hoc committee is it seemed like the opinions there in those rooms were confident that the city council was going to move forward with dissolving this. So again, it comes down to, are you amiable with these types of elements on how to handle equipment and allowing them to keep the equipment with the exception of the phones for use? With that too, we understand that we have to get Jason off the email exchange. We've talked with MIS2 on taking a copy of his files from the county server and copying that onto the city server and then discontinuing his access to a county server, which would follow in the next 10 to 15 business days. Again, with the vacation element, then we're not going to treat this as like a termination type of a situation in which we would pay out due vacation hours. Vacation and sick would be transferred over to the city as a balance on their books. And then county projects would be, the 4 identified county projects would be maintained. Then again, we still have the requests to have then the county assume responsibility, essentially financial for the first quarter. But you still have a check then that you're holding from the city. But we know that too, we also have requests for funding for Simon Center. So how you want to balance that becomes maybe the second conversation for more appropriately for another day.
So Clint, we're being asked to basically approve the transition plan that the city administrator brought forward. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
And
Or to amend and recommend back then to city council.
well,
Mr. Chair?
I want to play nice with the city, but I still want some county involvement in economic development in a formal sense. So I guess I would be in favor of going ahead with this proposal, but with the understanding that this isn't the last word. We will be looking hopefully at a new initiative somehow to get county involvement. And I'm thinking, if you've been around Jason and had the advantage of hearing his bi-monthly progress reports, the guy is really busy. It's incredible the amount of calls that people make to him. And well, we'd like to start this in your town, and what can you do for us? Can you do all the planning and meet with your zoning people? Whatever. It's just a mind numbing amount of hours. Anyway, he needs help, and I would hope in the future that the county can help out in some manner, and that's looking at the budgeted amounts that we've allocated in the future on our 5-year plan, maybe spending that, getting him some additional office help. And that would be maybe we could, hire Southwest Regional Planning on a piecework basis, get someone here from there that would help out with, and the emphasis would have to be on county outside of the city projects. That's, I haven't come to any great conclusions yet, but I'm hoping this might be the direction that we take in the future. Comments? Thoughts? Mr. Manning, you participated in some of those infill projects. Give us your take on that.
Do have a lot of thoughts on that, and my only disappointment with all the buildings you're talking about being tore down, I can't think of one case where one house has been torn down that one's been replaced in that same lot. For whatever reason, people are just not rebuilding. 99% of them houses are ones where it's been taken for taxes. So that's, I would like to find a way we can help the city where instead of a house just being torn down, we have an open lot. Majority of them are just bought by the neighboring house, just for a bigger lawn.
We sold, I remember we sold the lot to the city for $1, didn't we, Clint?
Multiple, yes, Mr. Chair.
More than once?
Yes, sir. Yep.
So we have done that,
Yeah.
Gary.
But I do like the way the county, in one instance, worked with me, the city. I know Josh had some involvement where I tore the house down for nothing. The city donated so much of the materials, and the county brought all the fill to fill in the basement. So we've worked well together, and I want to continue that.
Yeah, that's great. I'm gonna appoint you in charge of that coordination with all county departments in the city. At least report on it. Josh, do you have any comments on that? That you were involved? You're pointing at Melissa.
I just have a basic question. Is the premise or the motivation for them wanting to withdraw is that they see us as kind of hemming and hawing every year about cutting economic development, and they just are tired of it and they want to just take it over? Is that essentially summarize
Yes,
it?
that's part of it. A great portion. Uncertainty for Jason Glassbrenner then. And he gets a lot better benefits through the city. Health insurance in particular.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay. Yes, Mr. Seep.
yes, just one quick question to Clint. What are the pieces of equipment that are being transferred? I didn't catch that.
So the items that we're looking at is laptop, printer, monitor, keyboard, mouse, switches, and a cell phone. The landline phones, 2 of them will come back to the county.
And a stapler. Mr. Carroll.
Yeah, just a quick question on the numbers. The 33,134, I know we're not doing a payout, but we're still transferring 80 hours of vacation. That includes the vacation hours also then?
Can I have you say that one more time, Steve?
Sorry?
Can I have you say that one more time?
Yeah, they're asking us to assume responsibility for the expenditures through today at 33,134. So I'm just asking, does that include those 80 hours of vacation that have been accrued?
Yeah, we would not be paying out and doing a different dollar amount transfer. We're just going to be telling them essentially hours to add to his accrue banks over there, and it's going to be their financial responsibility to pay those out as used in the future.
How does that work?
It's on their, they're paying now.
Okay.
Is that good? Was that a good answer? On their dime.
They're taking it on. Essentially, it's accounting, right? But it's accounting too from the perspective of not having an employee essentially kind of doing a double dip thing where he's going to get paid out by the county for those hours and then go over there and get some type of a vacation balance or something added on top of that, so you kind of get paid out for it and you get it too. So that's what we're trying to avoid.
Mr. Gatto?
Item number 6, I am certain I know the answer to this, but we've received the contribution from 2021 and 22 for the Simon Center. This would be sharing in the deficiency of those years. Is that correct?
And that's a decision for you folks on how you want to approach that. But yes, that's how I kind of see it is, the different elements on here is economic development up until this point in time and what you want to do with that 2023 allotment with the city. You also have then a consideration of your other joint venture of Simons of 2020, 2021, and 2022 deficiencies with the Simon Center. So again, these numbers here are kind of based on the premise that you're willing to go with the proposal and kind of settle on allowing the city to not contribute for 2023. So then you have a check from them again of $51,000, but you're expecting the 47 and the 20 for Simons essentially. So does that make sense?
So the 51,000 is what exactly?
That is the city's share of economic development for
Of economic
2023.
development only?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yep.
Have we formally asked them to share in the 3 years of deficiency for the Simon Center?
Yes.
And what's the answer been?
I have not received a formal answer from them. That was kind of talking points through the ad hoc committee was to address that, but I have not received a formal response back from the city council.
Mr. Chair, it's unrelated but not mutually exclusive. If we're
True.
still expecting $60,000, we're agreeing to pay all of 2023 for Jason 33,000, and those are some big numbers.
Is this time sensitive, Clint? Is this something we can push off for a month to see what the city, number one, does tonight, and number two, what their response might be to the Simons deficiencies?
In regards to the funds and how you want to handle those, yes, you have time. In context of if they say that Jason is, if they're dissolving it, what are we going to do with Jason tomorrow? Those elements, you can always come back and ask for equipment later or decide what you want to do with vacation. But at the same time, we have to kind of know if we're going to end contributions into retirement and doing with his benefit programs and to get him enrolled then as a city employee and those type of mechanisms we need to know for tomorrow.
Well, so it does seem time sensitive then, in that regard. Is there any way that we can easily take out?
I mean, the other aspect is if you don't do anything tonight, then it'll probably be more so of him submitting a letter of resignation and termination tomorrow, terminating the employment, and then he's accepting a job offer there, kind of a thing is how I would be how it would work, or how I would see it working with a no action tonight.
Well, that doesn't seem very amenable.
Why not settle the Jason,
Exactly.
that position, but take the Simons part out until we know for sure?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'd be willing to make a motion to that effect that we accept line items number 1 and 2 and pend the rest of the considerations. And I think also including the 33,000 till we make a decision on 4, 5, and 6. But if we passed 1 and 2, that would kind of hold Jason harmless for all this.
And are you speaking from that revised budget general fund report, the ACS financial system report? What are you talking from, Tim?
I'm on the agenda cover, so considerations for next steps. I would propose make a motion for items 1 and 2 tonight.
Okay. And that cuts the Simons out of it right now.
So kind of from saying it, and not to put words in your mouth, Tim, but from then the proposal of the administrator, you're amiable to the equipment, the vacation, the sick leave, the IT network transition, and then essentially though waiting with county project and next steps. Is that
Yep,
fair to say?
exactly.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Do you second?
I do second that.
All right,
Discussion.
Mr. Carroll?
Wouldn't it be okay to add item 3 also? What was your concern with not adding that?
Maybe it's just mine. The fact that we are assuming all responsibility for the last 3 months for expenses, in tandem with, we have 67,000 floating out there for Simons. This doesn't seem like good faith to me.
I agree with Tim. I mean, even if we have to, if we take the 33, we at least get half of the 67. But I think we hold, not like we're holding it hostage, but we give it more time. Because if you look at the equipment, that was 60-40 split when purchased, if you didn't see that small print.
Stapler. Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in on this? Points 1 and 2.
Mr. Chair, this is Sean.
Yes.
So I think I like what Tim is suggesting, because I think he's suggesting to not enter this agreement about giving them 33 grand for the first 3 months of the year. Is that what you're saying, Tim?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, and I think, yeah, for me, because it seems like it's tied up with all this Simon stuff, I was hoping, I thought that maybe your all's group was going to sort some of that out, but it doesn't sound like you all have come to any resolution with the city council. Is that right, Marty?
Well, yeah, the mayor just kind of threw us having a financial consultant look at Simons through a 501c nonprofit tax-free corporation. So that
Okay,
took
so
care
they're
of the
not,
whole problem.
they don't want to pay the 2020 and 21 deficiencies. That's their position at this point.
Well, yeah.
Is that correct? Okay. Okay.
haven't paid
Well,
them
I think
yet.
I support what Tim is proposing. So thanks for offering that, Tim.
Okay. In effort to move this along, then, we're going along with points 1 and 2. We're not going along right now. Point 3. Okay, everyone got that? A motion and a second. I'll ask for a vote then. A voice vote. Signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. We will transmit that to the city. Okay. Agenda.
We're on item number 12, Mr. Chairman. Looking today for billing request from Sauk County. So the background on this item is Sauk County is requesting appropriations of $76,289 from the county in support of the airport project. This request is to cover Richland County's apportionment for 2021, 2022, and 2023. Payments for 2021 and 2022 were not requested due in part to withdrawal of Iowa County from the airport agreement and the continued challenges of ensuring FAA recognizes the changes in ownership prior to establishing a new owner's operations agreement and ordinance, of which Attorney Wendell has been beating his head on the wall for quite a while on that project. Richland County 2022 and 2023 amounts matched our budgets, but 2021 did not. Richland County, through the Finance and Personnel Committee action of April 7th, 2020, made motion to continue in budgeting at a 25.5% rate, which was the rate established in that existing ordinance and agreement that's in place, 1916. The increase from 35 to a 35% operational, 30% capital was made by verbal agreement with the chair's administrators and affirmed through the 2022 and 2023 budget process. An updated agreement remains in development. The clarity and expectations of 2021 essentially is kind of what remains in questions. I have no response back from Sauk County of a fully agreeing to the contribution amount that we set place following the changes with Iowa County. The decision is needed to pay or contest. At the present, the county would be about $3,015 shorter than expected in 2021, but we're ahead $661 ahead in 2023. Currently, our capital projects are at, that should be $120,520. I'm sorry, no. Currently our capital projects, so we're looking at $12,528 ahead of our capital projections from ARPA apportionments for the drainage ditch. So essentially, it comes down to the rate from 2021. We took action and budgeted it at the 25.5% rate, which was what was in the agreement. Iowa County got out of it. We've been kind of in a quagmire on getting a new agreement in place. Do you want to pay that, or do you want to contest it with Sauk County? Do keep in mind that, again, we're up a little bit from what we had budgeted for 2023 and what their actual budget came out to. And then currently right now we have portion for ARPA funds, roughly $130,000, and we're about $12,000 underneath that capital. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The Tri-County Airport. A few years ago, when it was still a Tri-County Airport, Iowa County, Sauk County, and Richland County shared in a modest appropriation each year, not real large, but still significant. And lo and behold, the airport was subject to flooding, terrible flooding. And Channel 27 was out there, Gary was out there. I could see him through the window of that pickup truck. And something had to be done. And Iowa County dropped out of the agreement, said, you guys are on your own. And it was certainly my thought going back, let's move back 4 years ago, maybe 4.5 years ago. We ought to tell them we're leaving as well. I asked the largest employer company who uses the Tri-County Airport is Cardinal Glass. I asked their representative on the his last name, Rich Valleteri, if he could give me a breakdown, for instance, on salaries that Cardinal Glass pays, not all employees, but Richland County employees. And that figure caused me to take a second look. And that was in the neighborhood of $20 million. And that's Richland County employees only. Richland County employees, I think, made up between 33 and 40% of their total employees. So that's significant. It's probably up. This was like 3 years ago, so I'm sure that figure is as much increased. That got my attention, and one of the first projects that Clint embarked upon was going with me, and Steve was our representative. Are you still on the Tri-County? Going to those meetings, and I'm trying to explain to Clint why in heck Richland County is involved in an airport, and we've got an airport in the Richland Center Municipal Airport. However, you can't land a jet there. You can land one, but you'd end up in Mrs. Turner's living room if you tried it. So you can land corporate jets at Tri-County Airport. Nice long runway. And we embarked on a project to drain the lake. And I think it's impressive. it was an engineered, I won't call it a ditch, it's more than that. A drainage system was constructed out there. Got a lot of federal help. Who knew that the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, cars and trucks, right? Who knew they had a whole division devoted to airports, and they do air traffic. I guess air traffic is transportation, isn't it? So anyway, to make a long story short, we're there. We've maintained our involvement. I met with the Sauk County chair, and I met out there one day to try to hammer out what Richland County's involvement should be. I never heard a word he said because there were airplanes going by constantly and a lot of traffic in and out of that little tiny building they've got that serves as the administration building. So here we are. Steve, do you want to comment on any of this?
Other than the fact that, yeah, it's the first time it's ever taken place in the state of Wisconsin, is why it's taken till, we still have no agreement, correct? We still have no agreement in place because it's never happened in the state of Wisconsin. What's happened here at Tri-County. So the ditch project is nearing completion. Josh and I were out there the other day. I've got some photos that I can share, but a little bit more left on that dirt work. But yeah, Cardinal Glass is building a new hangar. Kramer Brothers are probably going to buy their old hangar. So Kramer Brothers are going to start now. They're going to start moving a jet in as well to fly from here to Denver is their plan, because they have a Denver operations that's separate from the plane operation. So it's actually expanding. So doing well. Questions? I don't know if it's going to do us much good to try and get Sauk County to live up to what we agreed upon in what year was that, 2020, 3 years ago now, or which is what, 25%? Was that still when we were what, 1/3? Yeah.
Well, it was one quarter, 1/4, 1/2.
Yep.
Or I guess it was a 1/4.5, a 1/4.5, and 49.
Yep, and Cardinal actually has 1%, so it's 49. It was 49% Sauk, 25 Richland, 25 Iowa, and 1% Cardinal as far as expenses and voting. Cardinal has donated towards the ditch project. I think it's approaching probably $300,000 out of their pocket to help. They got the original engineering process going, and now I think if I'm not, is the final dollars amount set? Is it 90-10? 90% federal funding? Is that what we're going to end up with?
The last report I saw coming through Windy was that they thought that they were going to cover a bigger portion of the local match, not all of it, but that we would actually have the reduced amount, which is why we're currently under our estimated amount. We budgeted 130,000, and right now we're at our projected amount right now is 117,000, which means we're roughly 12,000 under in capital, if it holds true.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Carroll.
Yeah. So how long has this decision been in Sauk County's court to respond? And then is this again time sensitive, or should we wait for that?
It really comes down to a partnership type of an agreement here. They didn't bill us for the sake of what is it going to look like in the anticipation that we were going to have an ordinance arrived at. We still haven't. Well, we kept pestering them of saying we would like to get this off the books. Can you please bill us? Arrived at it. But again, we took action to set our budget in 2021 at a 25.5% based on that contract language. The year after, myself and Marty talked with Tim and Brent and came to a handshake on arriving at a 35% operational and a 30, with Sauk assuming 65. And that was kind of ratified through the budget process of approving those appropriations for those committees. So if we can go back and we can say, well, look here, should have been a 25.5% in 2021, and see if they're amiable to going with that, or we can say, well, we'll cut our losses on 2021. We know that we're a little bit ahead of what we had budgeted for 2023, and we're hopefully coming out ahead on capital projects for the 30% of which we budgeted in ARPA. So basically, do you want to contest 2021? But I don't have any finalized document that was signed from us and from them other than the ordinance, which would still say that we're at 25% and they're at 46, and then it would be up to Michael to defend our position if they said, no, we don't agree with that. But it calls the question then of who should be responsible for picking up Iowa's share with them pulling out of the agreement, which they might have the argument too that agreement dissolved as soon as, well, no, I think it continued on. We just have failed in partners to update the agreement.
So, Clint, I think some of this though this is something you'd like to clean up before you leave.
Yes, most definitely. We get this paid and then we can start worrying again to refocus on getting the ordinance in place and what the agreement looks like and doing the negotiation process on if you folks are comfortable with a 35 and a 30 and having that formalized so that we can move on knowing what expectations are and administrators don't have to bring these to public meetings and say, what's the right answer?
And we've already included it in our 5-year budget plan, have we not?
I believe so. Let me
Mr. Chair.
pull that up.
Melissa?
So essentially, if I'm understanding this, we had budgeted for 25.5 in 2021. But what you're saying is if we wanted to just do all 3 years, 21, 22, and 23 at the 35%, it's a $3,015 difference. That we would be, so what you're asking is, can we just add the $3,015 and
Yes.
pay them and be good partnership?
Do you want to?
Is that, can I make that a motion so we can move on? Okay.
I'll second.
I'm sorry if I made that more confusing than it had to be, but basically, yes. Do you want to contest $3,000?
So all 3 years will be at 35% operational.
Correct.
Okay.
Made and seconded to increase by 3,000, whatever that figure was. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. And you will tell Sauk County, won't you, Clint?
Yes, they'll receive a check from us. They should be smiles.
Smiling, turning cartwheels, okay, down the runway. And what's next on our agenda?
I believe we've reached now item number 13, Mr. Chair. See if I can get it pulled open here.
Yes, highway funding appropriation application.
So this item kind of came up as a question to our office in regards to applications for the congressional, congressional designated funding or directed spending. Recommending approval of a highway department to apply for grants for County O and County A. The background on this information is that Senator Markline recommended County Highway Department projects for the grant fundings. We had applied for a County O project through Senator Tammy Baldwin's office, and I believe for County A through Van Orden's office. We do have rules that would say a county project that requires matching funds should be acquired by county board. A background on this is with time sensitivity, I did give Commissioner Elder go ahead to put in applications for these. But I think what kind of came out of the actions on applying for these two was what was the county process on arriving at these types of decisions, and why didn't other types of projects be brought to the table? And I don't have an answer for it for this year. Everything kind of happened at the 1 or 2 week notice, of which I can let Josh kind of explain how that all rolled out.
Yeah, first we need to make a correction that the old project was done through Van Orden's office,
Oh,
and the
thank
A
you.
project was done through Baldwin's office.
Baldwin's office, thank you.
Throughout the year, this stuff kind of comes up, and it has a very short window of opportunity to apply for it. Working with Public Works Committee, we started a year ago making shelf-ready projects. County Road A was one of them, in anticipation for this to happen. County Road O, that is about a 19 and a half, almost a 20-year-old project with the county at this point. So we've been looking for funding for this one for a while. This is the last stretch I'm looking for funding for, so we may be able to put it to a close. That was at a request of Howard Markline, who's working hard at the state level to get us that funding, and recommended that I get this done through Van Orn's office so we can work on it at a federal level as well. A while ago, there is a cutout, I believe, in Rule 14. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But in 14A, it says the Rule 14, the rule does not take precedence over the following. There's only 3 matters that the county highway committee at that time now as Public Works have to come back to the county board on this stuff. And that's because of the time sensitivity on a lot of this applying for projects. Working with the administrator, let him know what's going on. We put together letters of recommendation and proceeded forward with it underneath that precedence. So
another talking point we have had at the department level as well is probably twofold on the county getting smarter on what's more appealing to our the congressional directed spending from a senator's perspective and a representative's perspective. Do you want a buffet of things to choose from not only the county but from the community, or would you like us as a county to try to shelf ready projects and try to prioritize and say, this is the one that we would really like you to do, and to kind of have those for future years and have some type of say through elected officials like yourself on saying, when this comes up again, this is our priority and our biggest ask that we want to do. But how it rolled out with this one is it was time sensitive. I made the decision on applying for these on behalf of the county, knowing that fundings were kind of already in place and in the queue for these. And that I also filled out 2 letters of support for the community in filling out a letter of support for the city in supporting a $3 million plus infrastructure project for the hospital, and then also for hospital proper on funding partial part of the new hospital building project. So the decision point today is recommended a resolution of after the fact to approve grant application for this congressionally directed spending, or taking no actions and kind of deferring that we still do have some highway types of regulations that allow us to maneuver without having action, or taking action, I guess, to requesting that the items be withdrawn from the congressional directed spending consideration. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Langrick. Well, we're not gonna take it back. I know that for sure. Yes, Josh. What? Mhm. So basically what Clint is telling us is that we probably should have been more timely with what we did, and it's already done.
I'll make the motion to accept them and send them out of county board for approval.
Thank you, Melissa. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Coy. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? You got it. Okay. Well, contract, yes, with Lone Rock for law enforcement services. Just prod me, Steve, if you find my lagging, so I'm getting tired. Sheriff Porter. Welcome.
So, I've been in, I guess, talks with Lone Rock for a while now. I've attended a couple. So I've been in talks with the Village of Lone Rock for a little while now. They have disbanded their police department and are looking to contract with us for law enforcement services. They're also, I don't know if they have yet or not, but looking at dissolving their municipal court as well. So they're going to run anything we do through our local court here, our circuit court. So I have brought this a couple times. We've talked about it a couple times at public safety. Lone Rock is ready to move on it. So I brought it directly to you with the resolution and the contract. I've been working on the contract with Michael for a couple months now, few revisions, so.
Do you have to increase personnel?
No, I would like to, but it's not necessary. The way we worded the contract is if we're unable to meet our obligations, the hourly obligations that they're requesting, we just won't bill them for the hours. We're gonna bill them for what we actually do and nothing more.
Let's go through Melissa's committee.
Yeah, and we've talked about it actually quite a few times, and the one question that, I mean, we all are in favor of it, but it was always the question of staffing and can they handle it? So the way that they've worked this out, I guess alleviates most of the concerns we had because we knew we weren't going to get another position, so. Unless it could be fully paid for by contract work.
Thank you.
All right. So the other side of this too would be, like I said, I would like to increase staffing. We probably will be coming back around to ask permission to apply for a COPS grant again. And this would probably take care of the matching side of the COPS grant to allow us to increase staff. So, you know, I may come back later and ask in conjunction with a grant application if I can increase staffing. But additionally, I'm also talking with the Village of Casanova about doing something similar for, well, less hours, but something similar there.
Okay, and the Village of Viola?
They have their own police department, and
Yeah.
I haven't approached them, and they haven't approached me, so.
Right. Okay, I think it's been well researched, and I'll accept
move
the
to
motion.
approve.
Motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Manning, seconds. All those in
Discussion,
favor?
discussion.
Sure.
What is
Go ahead.
what is the population that you'll be serving there? What's the population of Lone Rock?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but I will have an answer for you in 1 second.
What's the population of Casanova?
About 300.
188 is the answer.
830 says 837 for 2021.
837.
837.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a pretty good sized population to serve.
Okay, are you ready to vote? All those in favor of this resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Resolution is adopted. Now we have a place on our agenda where we want to go into closed session. I will accept a motion to go into closed session. Mr. Manning, seconded by Mr. Gotchall. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Session. What I'd like to entertain is a motion to go with the amended job description that was transmitted to us today and have them post that job description at a salary range of $100,000 to $125,000. Mr. Manning makes that motion. Seconded by Mr. Cooey. And this will come before the board then on the 18th. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Mr. Cooey, seconded by Manning. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Thank you for a good meeting.
We're adjourned, Mr. Seat.